Welcome to the Impact Show with your host Samuel I Can Win and Kimwin. Looking forward to tonight's show, guys. We've got questions to be answered, and we've got answers for your questions. So I hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a fantastic week. Hope your week has been absolutely brilliant. Hope you've been learning, and also in your property business, I hope you've also been earning. It's a great pleasure to be on the show tonight for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is because of one of the pieces of information or one of the news articles I'm going to be sharing with you guys, something that was sent to me by one of my coaching clients earlier on this week, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that with you guys today. Now, before we go deeper into the show, I want you guys to do three things for me, three basic things. First thing is just drop a comment inside of the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from so we can know where you're actually viewing this content from. Secondarily, let me know if you can hear me. Just let me know, say I can hear you. Okay. And third and foremost, if you are looking forward to the content, okay, if you're someone who's been here before and you're looking forward to the content, just say here again. You can write in the comments here again. If you're someone who it's your absolute first time jumping on the Impact Show, then just write in the chat first time. It'll be fantastic to find out who's here for the first time, who's been here before, who's got value from this kind of show before, etc., etc. Now, there are so many people who have been on the Impact Show in so many different ways, whether it be through people that have phoned in when we've done our live Q&As, whether it's been through people that have just sent through the chat, chat messages. So again, guys, it's always a pleasure to be able to give value to our community by answering your questions and making ourselves available. So tonight's show, we're going to be doing exactly the same thing. We're going to be making ourselves available. We're going to be opening up the phone line in a short while. But just before we do that, like I said, let me know where you're actually tuning in from, where in the country, where in the world, where on the globe. Secondarily, let me know if you're here for the first time or if you're someone who's been here before, just say here before. And then side by side with all of that, let me know if you're looking forward to getting value from tonight's show. Okay, I'm looking forward to tonight's show. There's a lot of value. It's action-packed, jam-packed. So what I'm going to do without further ado is I'm going to basically open up the phone line straight away. Okay, I don't want to keep the phone line kind of closed for too long because I know people are going to want to share kind of what's going on with them, the specific questions they might have right now as well. So we're going to get the number opened up straight away, and that will just give you guys the opportunity to be able to call in and ask any specific questions that you may have in terms of your property journey or in terms of your property business, because that's what it's about on this show. It's all about helping people move forward in their property endeavors, helping them move forward in their property activity and helping them get the best out of their property business. All right. So without further ado, guys, we are going to open the phone lines now. And what you can do is you can use the telephone number which is going across the top of the screen in order to call in if you have any property questions you would like to be answered in this current climate. And side by side with that, there's the access code 695922, which you will be able to use in order to get your questions answered. So if you've got questions, feel free to put them through. If you've got specific scenarios or specific situations that you're going through that you'd like some support on in order to strategize through in your property journey, feel free to just utilize the telephone number and the access code, and we'll be able to help you with that. Now, whilst you guys are doing that, making that decision, I'm going to call in, I'm not going to call in, etc., I'm going to jump straight into some content which I think is extremely important for us. I think this information that I'm going to share with you guys is extremely important for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because this is going to play a major part as it pertains to people's ability or inability thereof in order to access funding. Now, for some of you who've been following us over the last several weeks on the Impact Show, and those of you who haven't been following us on the show for the last several weeks, feel free to utilize YouTube. You can basically go through to our previous videos, our previous live streams, and take full advantage of that. So I'm going to encourage you to do so. But basically what I'd say to you guys is to bear in mind that as you go through those live streams, they each relate to the specific week they came out. But there's a number of key pieces of information that we shared in those previous weeks. I've just been told we've got a caller coming through. I think we've got 2 callers coming through right now. So could all the callers just be patient, and we'll get you on as soon as possible. So for the last couple of weeks, what we've basically been informed of is a whole bunch of different things that have been taking place as it pertains to the property industry and as it pertains to the current climate and the current scenario that we're in. So what we've been doing is we've been making ourselves available in order to help people move forward in their property journey by providing kind of an opportunity for them to strategize with someone else. So I'm a property strategist. I spend a lot of my time investing in property and strategizing with other property people, and I found this to be one of the most convenient platforms and ways in order to add value to the community, to the coaching clients I had as well, by basically opening up this opportunity through means of the live to basically answer people's questions. So guys, that's what we're going to be doing today on the show. So if you've got specific questions, feel free to let us know. If there's specific things you want us to discuss and talk about, let us know and we'll use that. I've got quite a few pieces of information I want to go through. If we've got time for that, we'll definitely do that as well. So what I'm going to do just to get us started, I'm going to jump onto the phone line. I believe the team said we've got 2 callers already. So let's see who's calling in and let's see how we can help them. Okay, so caller number 1, we've got 3054. 3054. Let's see if we can get this call up and running. Hello, good evening. Is that caller 3054? Hi, good evening, Noemi. How are you doing?
Pretty good, but having lots of queries, so it's great to have the conversation.
No problem. And it's great to have you on as well. All right, so guys, if you just let me know that you can hear Noemi, I can hear her, suffices. As long as you let me know you can hear Noemi, I'm going to allow Noemi to shoot with any of the questions that she has, and then we'll jump in with the answers. A great big hello to all of you guys who are tuning in. Feel free to hit the like button to let YouTube know that this is content that you want people to hear. All right, so Noemi, I'm going to let you flow. First and foremost, you're happy for me to share, your voice with the YouTube world and for people to hear any questions you have?
Sure, no problem.
Excellent. And side by side with that, you're absolutely happy for people also to hear whatever advice or, support I decide to give you as well over the telephone. Is that okay?
Of course.
Excellent. Okay, so fire away. Question number 1.
Question number 1 is the main question. It's just thinking of sourcing for someone who's starting out in the current climate with sourcing, and we know that there are many opportunities, and it seems like especially for sourcing, for acquiring properties, it will be a pretty productive time in the next few years and months. But how do you decide, how do you choose the right sourcing strategy? There are so many different types of property, 20, 30, 40 different types of ways of acquiring different property deals. How do you, as a beginner and someone that is in London, what is the low-hanging fruit that you should be aiming for in terms of complexity versus simplicity, and the kinds of investors that you would pass that on to, and what's the easiest way to bridge that gap? Okay. What are the strategies for sourcing that are the easiest to bridge?
Okay, so first and foremost, what I'm going to do, Noemi, I'm going to thank you for that question, because that's a great question in the current climate. I think a lot of people are going to get value from us talking about that question. A few people have said you're very quiet on their end, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the volume. Apologies for that. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just basically sharing what Noemi's question was, because it said that, because I think it's Yogesh who just threw in a comment saying very quiet at his end. So for those of you who didn't hear Noemi's question, it was a very, very powerful question in my opinion. So I'm going to give the precursor and then I'll give the actual question. So Noemi's basically said, for someone who's interested in property sourcing, so that's the strategy we're talking about, in the current climate, Noemi's alluded to the fact that this climate is probably a really good climate for sourcing property opportunities and obviously generating revenue through means of doing so, which I totally agree with. So again, I agree with Noemi on that. Noemi's gone on to say that in London, her question effectively was, what are the low hanging fruits and what is the ideal sourcing strategy in order to acquire those opportunities? And side by side with that, she also mentioned in order to tap into the investors that are needed in order to basically monetize at this time. So Noemi, is that a good summary of your question?
Yes, it is.
All right, good
I might
stuff.
add little bits to it
Yeah,
later on, but that
feel
was
free.
yeah.
Feel free as we go through, feel free to add anything on as you like. All right, so guys, again, I'm going to say this before I jump into kind of my thoughts on Noemi's question. Hit the like button, let YouTube know that this is content that can be of value to multiple people, not just yourselves. Okay, this is one of the ways you can share. Okay, we have strategy calls for over £400, coaching calls for over £300. We do this absolutely free. So by you hitting like, you're telling YouTube that other people should be able to take advantage of this. So feel free to hit the like button or subscribe. All right, so let's just jump straight in. So Noemi, first and foremost, like I said, I want to thank you for your question. I think your question is a great question. I think there's a lot of people in this current climate who are shying away from strategies such as property sourcing because of their lack of understanding. And generally this happens all the time. When people fail to understand how to monetize a particular approach, they don't monetize the particular approach. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a number of the constructs you've used. First and foremost, London being the landscape. Secondary, and again, obviously all of London is different, but I'm just going to start with London holistically and give some keys which I think will help people regardless of where they are in London. But then secondarily, I'm going to talk also about the particular approach that I think that I would encourage people to utilize. So let's start here, London. Now, London as a landscape, okay, it's the capital city of England, okay? It's the capital, effectively, you could say, of the UK. It's the most well-known city in the whole of the UK. Now, why would I say to you that London's still a good market in this current climate? Part of the reason is because it's notoriety. You know, we've seen shows for years, location, Homes Under the Hammer, all of these mainstream television shows, which always talk about location being a key. So as a direct byproduct, yes, I do believe London as a landscape, as a marketplace is a great key, and thus going to be a great asset for someone who's a beginner, brand new, starting out in their sourcing business. Now, in terms of what to look for, I would break that down to a statement that I've heard from one of my coaches years ago, and I'll share it with you. And that is, carve out your own niche. Okay. And that's something that if you've got a pen and paper right now, as you're watching the show, you should write that down. Carve out your own niche. Now, what do I mean by carve out your own niche? In property specifically, we spoke about this on one of the previous live shows, not in the same way, but I gave this example of a strategy. There are cities in the UK, not London, for example, but there are cities in the UK where you can buy a house for less than £100,000. There are cities in the UK where, due to the nature and the style of the architecture, you will have very large master bedrooms and then one separate small bedroom, okay? And that's a 2-bedroom house. But there are cities in the UK where you find these two metrics, i.e. a house less than 100,000, which means your deposit is 25,000 or less. Secondarily, 2 bedrooms with one massive master bedroom, 2 windows in those bedrooms, which, as I've shared in one of the previous live streams, are very easy to split into 2 bedrooms and thus turn a 2-bed house into a 3-bed house. And potentially, if the numbers make sense in that specific area, 3-bedroom houses in that area might value from as low as 120, 130,000. So you can generate a 20,000, 30,000 pound uplift on that particular property just by adding a partition wall, okay? And a partition wall shouldn't cost you more than £5,000. So for less than £5,000 investment in some areas where the numbers make sense, you can add on 20, £30,000 in terms of an asset. Now, why do I give that as an example? Because that particular strategy is a niche strategy, okay? It doesn't work everywhere, and the architecture in every area is not going to work for it. But in London, for example, there's a particular strategy which is very similar. I know many investors who like to buy 1 or 2 bedroom apartments and convert those 1 or 2 bedroom apartments into 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, for example. Now, why am I giving this an example? The reason I'm giving this as an example is because that is carving out a niche. Now, if you're a property sourcing agent or you're someone who's trying to start out your property sourcing business, what you can very easily do, okay, very easily, is take some time. And this is what I don't see enough people doing who are really serious about being long term in their property sourcing endeavors, what I don't see enough people doing is taking time to really plan and strategize before taking action. Okay, you're going to do a marketing campaign, you're going to do leaflets, you're going to do landlord letters, you're going to do whatever particular campaign you're thinking of. The first thing you should have done is ask yourself, who is my ideal client? Okay, and as a property sourcing agent, many of us don't realize this, but we have to ask that question twice. Okay, why do we ask it twice? One, because we have to get stock, which is the property opportunity. That's the first time we have to ask that question. Who's our ideal client? Is it the owner of a 1-bedroom property? Is it a buy-to-let owner of a 1-bedroom property, or a residential owner of the 1-bedroom property? Then the second question, which is the same question but to the other side of our market, who's our ideal client? We need to ask that question as it pertains to the investor who will be buying this opportunity from us. And like I was saying, I don't see enough property sourcing agents take time out, ask themselves that question, strategize and plan around that question, and then create and construct marketing to deploy as it relates to the primary strategy. Does that make sense, Noemi?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Bit
So
abstract, but it does.
say that again.
It's a bit abstract, but it does make
Abstract.
sense.
Okay, cool. So let's get into the meat of it. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so for the guys, hopefully you can hear Noemi now. If you didn't, she just said that the response I gave was a little bit abstract, but it makes sense. All right, so let's get into it a bit with more meat and bones. So like I gave an example of, certain cities in the UK where you can buy a house, etc., etc. Let's go into the strategy that I gave a moment ago. Okay, you might find an investor who's happy to buy a 1-bedroom flat which he knows he can turn into a 2-bedroom flat. That is a strategy an investor's going to use. Now, the reason it's important for me to understand the strategy the investor's going to use is because that can inform my decision about the stock I want to go and find. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm looking for HMOs for HMO investors, I'm not going to do marketing strategies that only find or help me acquire 1-bedroom apartments or 2-bedroom apartments. But equally, if I'm saying, look, I'm only going to source properties for the kind of investor who's looking for a 1-bedroom flat he can turn to a 2-bedroom flat, then I'm not going to waste my time searching a HMO landlord list and start deploying HMO landlord letters, because that's not the stock I'm looking for. So this is effectively what I'm saying to you. And one of the things that, again, this relates to what I was mentioning earlier about strategizing. A lot of people know me, they don't start with the end in mind, i.e., okay, by the end of 12 months, how many properties do I want to source and sell? Let's say the answer to that is 4. Okay, let's make it really basic, 1 per quarter. All right, if I want to sell 4 properties in the next 12 months, who effectively do I want to sell them to? Now, there may be investors you've already connected with, so you already know, okay, I want to sell it to these kind of investors, and this is what they're looking for, and then I can start working backwards. Or I might not have investors in mind. So the question is, how do I now locate those investors? Now, there's multiple strategies to locate investors. One of the strategies that I talk about all the time is through means of networking, going to networking events, property investor network meetings, progressive property network meetings, going to networking environments where people are there all around the centralized focus of property, connecting with them and just letting them know what you do. Hi, my name's Samuel. I own a sourcing agency. What we do is we find HMO properties which are ripe for conversion to increase rooms and therefore increase rents. Now, I'm speaking to them in the language of the end product, i.e., I want an investor, a HMO buyer who's going to be in cahoots with that strategy, with that approach. Okay, I want to buy HMOs from sourcing agents such as Samuel. I want to add a room or two. I want to employ certain strategies which are going to increase the cash flow far beyond that of the original owner of the property. So the key to what I'm saying is start with thinking about, okay, who am I sourcing these opportunities for? And then after you think, who am I sourcing these opportunities for? And again, this doesn't have to be a specific individual or a specific type of person. What this has to be is a specific avatar. That's what we call it, a customer avatar. So that particular client avatar, this is the kind of investor I'm looking for, is the person I work backwards from and start to decide what I want to actually look for. Now, to answer the part of your question where you asked, what are the low-hanging fruits? If I'm going to be totally transparent, start with price, okay? Low-hanging fruits, if you want to start with price in every area, is going to be the smallest denomination of property available in that area. So, for example, I'm based in East London.
Sorry, I didn't understand when you said start with what? The word I
Price.
didn't understand.
Price. That's okay. Price.
Price.
Price. The price. The property price. Yeah. So start with price. If you want to search for the low hanging fruits, always start with price. So what do I mean by start with price? If I'm in the East London region, in Tower Hamlets, across Tower Hamlets, you've got HMO stock. You've got massive houses, 7, 8 bedroom houses, 5 bedroom houses, 4 bedroom houses, all the way down to 2 1 bedroom houses. Then below that, you're going to have 3 bedroom flats, 4 bedroom flats, 2 bedroom flats. If you want to go for the lowest hanging fruit, it's always going to be the property opportunities that cost the least for the investor to purchase, cost the least for you to control. And generally, again, I'm just saying generally speaking, that is generally the smallest denomination of property. So the smallest denomination of property, usually you're talking about 1 bedroom flats, maybe in some cases studio apartments. Now, I would encourage people to stay away from studios. The reason why is because it's very rare you find investors looking for studio apartments to rent out. That's not a common approach for most investors, but you will find a lot of investors who are interested in buying 1 bedroom flats. And then you'll find a niche, which goes back to the main point I was making earlier about carve out your niche. You will find a niche group of investors who do not only look for 1 bedroom flats, but like to generate an additional amount of equity by acquiring those 1 bedroom flats and basically turning them into 2 bedroom flats, for example. So again, I'm not encouraging anybody or saying to anybody, yeah, go out there, get 1 bedroom flats, turn them into 2 bedroom flats. What I am encouraging people to do is listen to the principle behind what I'm basically sharing. You convince yourself of a viable strategy, a viable, financially viable strategy that an investor will make money from applying. The moment you've convinced yourself that investors will make money from this particular viable strategy, work backwards to start to acquire those particular property assets so that they can be used according to that appropriate strategy. So for example, you might say, I'm only going to focus on finding 3 bedroom houses because the right 3 bedroom houses can be converted into 5 or 6 bedroom HMOs. Now, you're not going to convert the house to a 5 or 6 bedroom HMO, but because you know that particular 3 bedroom houses lend themselves really well to a 5 or 6 bedroom HMO, you then go and acquire those investors who are interested in adding the 60, 70, 80,000 pounds after the acquisition to convert that 3 bedroom house, which might rent for 1,600, 1,800, into a 6 bedroom HMO, which might rent for 3,600. As an example. And that's what you focus on. So again, the key, the heart of what I'm sharing is think about how your end user makes money. Because if it's not very clear to the investor how he's going to make money from buying this from you, he's not going to have an interest in buying it from you. So that's the investor side. Obviously, on the seller side, the first key in that regard is, after you've identified the particular stock you're looking for, is to create, construct and deploy marketing that is effective to that market. Now, the funniest thing is, most people who do exactly what I'm talking about, they a lot of the time have very little competition in terms of the properties they're walking into to negotiate with sellers. And the reason why is because most people do scattergun approaches. Most people say, okay, landlord letters, I'm sending out landlord letters. Leaflets, I'm sending out leaflets. Leaflets are a great blanketing strategy to blanket an area and let an area know that you're there, you're active. But what's your niche strategy? What's your carve in the niche? Okay. Someone once said to me, and this is something I've employed in our business for a very, very long time. We have 2 different strategies. Okay. All our marketing, any area we go to, we have 2 different strategies. One we call the deep strategy. Okay, so the deep strategy is where we're niching in, we're carving in, we're going really deep. We're speaking in the language of the seller of the specific property stock we want. And then we have the wide strategy. So the wide strategy is where we're just saying in the area, we're here to buy. If you're interested in selling, come and see us. If you're interested in renting, if you're doing rent to rent, the equivalent will be come and see us. And the benefit of having the deep and the wide is the wide allows everyone in the area to start to get to know you and your brand. The deep speaks specifically to the property opportunity you're looking for. So I'll give you a very, very clear example. So this one is not abstract. A leafleting campaign of 5,000 leaflets every single month across a particular area is telling between 1,000 to 5,000 people every single month, we're here to buy property. A Facebook ad campaign that's going to 2 or 3 postcodes within that 1,000 property region saying, do you own a 3 bedroom house? Are you interested in selling? Are you fed up of, bills upon bills? Speaking specifically to the particular client you're trying to serve. Now, you might be trying to serve a number of different clients, okay? It's not always about one size fits all. If you're looking for effective, real motivations in terms of sellers, I'll read out to you some of the things, some of the key areas you might be looking for, and this hopefully might help you. If I can find one of these sheets that I had here yesterday. Okay, the sheet's not here, so it must be in the other room. Okay, but I'll just go off by head and share with you guys a few of the areas that you guys might want to target. One of the areas is divorce. Okay, divorce and estrangement. This is an area where when people are divorcing, they're separating, they might want to sell up their assets. Okay, why do they want to sell up their assets? Because they would prefer for them to be able to sell their assets and to share their assets prior to a court telling them you have to share it like this. So divorce is one area. Another one, obviously the most common most people talk about, is financial issues. So people who have got debts, outstanding debts, credit card debts, some people who have gambling debts. Because of persistent bad habits with gambling, some people want to sell their house with speed. So again, these are things to look out for. Another thing is court repossession. For some reason, someone hasn't been paying their mortgage. They may have lost their job. As a result, their house is going to be repossessed. Because of that, they want to sell with speed, and they want to, a lot of the time, sell with certainty. So they're just three, as an example, scenarios. Now, let me use those scenarios again to get it very practical to help you understand how you might, I'm going to take one of them, but how you might deploy a very successful marketing campaign to that particular client. Okay. And this is something we've done in the past as well. You have gamblers. I don't want to use that term to just blanket over people, but you have people who engage in gambling. Based on engaging in gambling, you have some people who become addicted. As a result of becoming addicted, in many cases, as I alluded to a moment ago, they now want to sell their house because of the fact that their gambling debts have spiraled out of control. They believe if they sell their house, liquidate, get some equity out of that house, they can pay off their gambling debts and move on. And in many cases, that can happen. Now, listen to this. Where do you know you're going to find people gambling? Okay, there's two places. There's in the real place and the online place. Okay, and a lot of people forget this. For every real environment, there's usually an online environment, a virtual environment of the same thing. Now, pre-lockdown, one of the strategies we used is targeting betting shops, betting establishments. Okay, now we might have befriended or built a relationship with a local betting shop, with the manager inside of the shop, and asked the manager, can we leave our leaflets in your store? Okay, now by leaving our leaflets, we buy houses very quickly in the store. What generally happens is now we are placing our leaflets in the sight of the people who are our potential customers, people who through means of gambling debts have problems and want to sell their house with speed. Secondarily, like I said, there's the brick and mortar establishment, the real physical place, but there's also the virtual place. So what do I mean by the virtual place? Well, there are hundreds of online gambling sites. You know, some of you probably have seen the new Jose Mourinho advert where he's now promoting another gambling organization. These online portals have opportunities for you to place adverts on them. On a gambling website, you can place an advert, and that advert might say, are you trying to sell your house with speed? We here at Impact Properties, we here at Samuel Properties and Co., whatever your company is, we can help you. And that's how you can start to market effectively to your ideal client avatar. But the key isn't about just doing marketing. The key is about doing marketing selectively to your client avatar. Does that help? Excellent, excellent. You said there was a bit more, so don't be shy. Don't be shy. Let me ask you this, Noemi. Yeah. Apologies. Let me ask you this before you go forward. Yep. From what I've shared, what was the most valuable thing that you think you can use straight away?
That I shouldn't go with some. This might not be the right word, but some kind of standard suggestion of sourcing. Like everyone, at any training course that you do on sourcing, everyone says, oh, letters, leaflets, etc. And for me, that just never made sense. And I never gained enough momentum because it wasn't mine. Versus this makes a lot more sense to say, what is my situation? What am I more inclined to connect with? Certain types of people, certain types of property, certain types of investors, etc. And really personalize this, which should have been the starting point, really, of doing anything in property.
Powerful. All right, that makes sense. So, I guess if I summarize your response in terms of the most value you took from that suggestion that I shared with you, effectively what you're saying is don't follow the herd. Yeah?
Um, yeah, yeah, in a way, yes.
All right, good stuff. All right, so I'm gonna pass it back to you, Noemi. Yeah, what else did you want to ask? And for those of you who are viewing, if you've got value from that suggestion, from the solutions that I shared with Noemi, feel free to hit like, feel free to hit subscribe, feel free to become a part of our community, so that as you move forward in your property journey, we can continue to support you as well. So, Noemi, what else?
That was great stuff. So building on that, should you pick out only one niche and master it? And what would be the right kind of, or some examples of niches that are coming up due to the current situation? Now, debt management seems an obvious one, but for example, next door to where I live, there are a lot of properties that come on with cash buyers only, with short lease extensions, etc. So that seems to be a fairly straightforward approach as well. How many niches do how do I go about this basically?
Okay, powerful.
There seems to be a lot of options.
Powerful. Now, obviously, I know a bit more about yourself in terms of your property journey because you're one of the people on our coaching program. What I would say to you, Noemi, is this: unless you're working with a coach, someone who's got a bit more experience than you, focus on one niche. That's what I'd say. Okay. Even if you are working with a coach, a good coach will tell you the same thing. Focus on one niche. The reason why I use that term, I premise it, unless you're working with a coach, is for a very simple reason. It's because of the simple fact that if you're working with a coach or an organization or a team, you generally will end up with more bandwidth to do stuff than if you were working on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Like in our Facebook group, there are a few people in our Facebook group who are in the same geographical location as you. So just by virtue of the fact that you're on our coaching program, there's a few people that if the 3 of you, 4 of you, 5 of you were focusing on different niches, because you're all in the same geographical location, you can tap into each other's expertise and leverage each other to do deals that are not inside of your niche. Does that make sense?
So basically pass on the leads that we get that we don't want to take forward.
Powerful. So that's one side of it, but that's not the only side of it. One side of it is exactly what you just said. Share the leads, share the information. The other side of it is actually shared knowledge. So for example, if you are focused on short lease strategies, which is a strategy I'm very comfortable and familiar with, and let's say someone else who's on the coaching program is focused on HMO properties, for example, the same example I gave earlier, converting 3 beds to 5 or 6 bed HMOs. Because the two of you are focused on 2 different niches, you're going to be doing 2 different sets of deep marketing. You may be doing the same sets of wide marketing, but your deep marketing is going to be different. So because your deep marketing is going to be different, it's not only your deep marketing that generally produces results. Your wide marketing might produce someone who's got a 3-bedroom house calling you, even though your deep marketing is focused on people with short lease opportunities. Okay. So the point is, if you are someone new, and I'm saying this because the beginning of your first question was about someone being new, starting out, looking for the low-hanging fruits. If you're someone who fits that criteria, my real advice and real insights to you would be follow one course until successful, which is the acronym for focus. Focus on just one particular niche. Why? Because in a very short time, when you do focus on one particular niche, you become an expert. You can become a specialist in that area. And it doesn't have to take 20 years to become an expert in a particular area when you focus on a niche. The problem is it takes a lot of people, especially in property, a very long time to be seen as an expert because so many people are trying to do so many different things. And this is one of the things that I talk about all the time. I've got a presentation that I call the primary reason why most people fail in property. And in that presentation, I usually expose the fact that there are 3 different types of revenue you can generate in property. And most people, because they don't have any real property education, they're trying to achieve all 3 at once. And that lack of focus is really the biggest reason why most people fail. And we're actually working on a new resource we're going to be releasing soon, where we're basically going to break this down as well as a whole bunch of other concepts for people in a very simple, simplistic fashion. But coming back to what we're talking about, like I would just say to you, first and foremost, focus on one particular niche. Now, if you are someone who's watching this, who has an environment or has a team of people that are working with you, then you can start to extrapolate the idea and be like, okay, person A focuses on this niche, person B focuses on that niche, person C focuses on this niche. And because people are focusing on different niches, that gives you the bandwidth to speak confidently about multiple niches and not just one niche. So I would say you want to have a primary school education on multiple niches in your area, but you want to have a secondary, if you can, even college or university level education on the specific niche you're focusing on. So hopefully everybody understands what I mean by that. If you don't, I'll elaborate a little bit more. In primary school, you usually have one teacher who teaches every subject. Okay, so if you're in year 5, you get one teacher who's going to teach you English, who's going to teach you maths, who's going to teach you science, who's going to teach you everything. So because you get the one teacher who's teaching you everything, what generally happens is they say a primary school teacher needs to know a little bit about a lot of different things. Does that make sense, Noemi? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah? But in secondary school, you have one teacher who's teaching you one subject. So your maths teacher in secondary school usually only teaches you maths. Your English teacher in secondary school usually only teaches you English, and so on and so on. And the reason that happens is because by the time you get to secondary, the teachers are a bit more specialized. So the same thing I would say you need to apply to your property business. When you're looking at multiple niches, just so you know, okay, in my particular area, like you said, in my area, I know that there's short lease opportunities. In my area, I know that there's opportunities for obviously the financial issues, which you mentioned is going to be obvious in multiple areas, and the 3 or 4 other things. So I would say have a primary school education on all 4 of those areas, all the 4 areas that you think are going to come up in your specific geographical location. Have a basic understanding of short leases, have a basic understanding of 3-bed to 5-bed or to 6-bed HMO conversions, have a basic understanding of people with financial issues, have a basic understanding of each of them. But the niche you choose to double down on, you become the expert. You become the person that if somebody says short lease in Southeast London, whoever they're talking to, 95% of the time, they're going to say, you need to speak to Noemi. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Excellent. So that's going to come as a byproduct of focus. That's not going to come as a byproduct of being scattergun in terms of your approach. So that's what I'd say to you.
Okay, can I build on it with 2 more questions, and then I'll
Feel free.
definitely make room for someone else as well.
Feel free.
One
And guys,
is-
if you want to call in, feel free to call in. You'll be on hold for a moment just as we get through the questions Noemi's asking. But again, Noemi, feel free to keep going.
Okay, would it even be wise to say there's, for example, one topic I already know enough about, but it doesn't apply to my area because it's already Article 4, so could I apply it somewhere else? Versus these other lower-hanging fruits like short leases, I'm seeing them in a different area. Would 2 areas with 2 different strategies make sense, or is that too much? And the other thing is, how do you actually choose your niche? Now, if we think in the wider world of property, I don't even know how many strategies there are. Let's assume there's
Thousands.
20 and 40 more.
There's more than that.
Okay. How, when you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge, I don't want to be chasing down all those rabbit holes. How do I pick out the one that would be appropriate for me, given, I mean, you know me better, maybe we can extrapolate this in another time, but how do I pick out the one that would be the most appropriate? I don't want to waste 3 years just to realize, oh, I actually don't really enjoy this strategy.
That's powerful. So again, guys, hopefully you can hear Noemi. You heard what she just asked. If you didn't, just to recap, she asked another, what I think is extremely powerful question. She said, how do you actually choose your niche fairly quickly rather than spending 3-4 years working on something and finding out that you don't like it? Now, I'm gonna caveat what I'm going to answer for you, Noemi, with this simple statement. Obviously, time teaches us a lot of things. You know, the gift of hindsight, foresight, and insight, you know, we can't get in an instant. So the reason I'm sharing that with you before I go into what I would see as the obvious or the viable strategy for this is because I want you to bear in mind, you can do something that you love today and in 3 years' time say to yourself, you've fallen out of love with it. That makes sense, right? All right, so I'm premising what I'm going to say to you with that because I don't want you to feel as though in 3 years time, oh Samuel, you told me da 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 da, and then it's like, well, you're not the same person you were 3 years ago. All right, so Noemi, things do change.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with things changing. That's just the way life is. You know, my dad used to tell me something so powerful. My dad used to give me all of these wisdom nuggets, and I really appreciate my dad for it. But one of the things my dad always used to say to me is, Samuel, remember, no condition is permanent. Okay, no condition is permanent. And if you think about that, that helps you understand, you know. And I'm going to share this with you guys. I'm going to take what my dad shared and say this to you guys, so hopefully you guys get some even more value from it. If no condition is permanent, what you have to understand is the current predicament we're in right now is not going to be permanent. So as a byproduct, if there are opportunities right now to source and sell properties, those same opportunities are going to convert into non-opportunities after a period of time. Does that make sense as well, Noemi? Yeah?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's jump into the meat of your question. And guys, look, before I share more value in terms of Noemi's question, I've said it already, I'll say it again. If you are getting value in any way, shape or form from this footage, from this video, press the like button. Okay, let the world know that you like this content. Okay, side by side with that, if you haven't subscribed and you're not a part of our community, become a part of our community, hit subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can stay up to date with all of the video content that we put out there for you guys for free on YouTube. All right, so Noemi, your question now is, how do I pick my niche, and how do I pick my niche appropriately so that in 2-3 years time, I'm not looking back and saying to myself, oh, why am I doing this, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
All right, so
well, maybe we can bring that down to, let's say, 6 months. By the time I master it and I get to the bottom of it, I don't want to find out then that it doesn't work for me.
all right, cool. So I'm gonna say this. Let's not change your question yet. The reason we're not gonna change your question yet is because personally, and I'm just sharing my view. Personally, I don't think you're gonna master a strategy in 6 months. Okay, you might learn a lot about it. There's a lot of information out there on the internet. For the 399 community, as one of my coaches used to call it. But the point I'm just saying, just simply, is it takes a lot longer than 6 months to master a strategy. It can take you 3 weeks, 6 days, 6 months to learn the process of a strategy, and maybe even to carry out a strategy. But to actually master that strategy, you're going to be doing that strategy for a number of years, or you're going to do the strategy hard, which is what I'd recommend, for a couple of years, maybe 2 years, but then you're going to do it passively or softly for some subsequent years before you're going to feel comfortable. And the only reason this is because every seller is different and every investor is different. So every time you're working with a different seller and a different investor, you're in a different environment, even though the strategy is the same. Does that make sense? Yeah, so we'll get onto the 6 month thing, but what I'm going to answer, I think that, the value I'm going to give, I think is going to help you anyway, in light of both scenarios that you've just alluded to. So guys, this is a shameless plug, as they call it, but it's not a plug, it's just a reality. Okay, so Noemi made mention to the fact that there are between 30 and 40, or 20 and 40 strategies out there, and I said no, there's a lot more. Okay, now some time back I created this resource, okay, and this resource is called 30 ways in 30 days. The reason I created this resource is a video program which basically shares with people 30 different ways you can generate revenue using property as a vehicle. It says on the front, multiple ways to generate revenue using property. Okay, 30 ways in 30 days is the resource I created, which helps you understand that. Now, some people think I created that resource because I wanted to give knowledge and all of that stuff. Guys, look, the reason I actually created that resource is for a very, very simpler reason, and I'm going to share that reason with you right now, because it's the foundation to what I'm going to share with Noemi. The reason I created that resource is because I wanted people to understand that there are so many more ways you can make money from property than the ways you already know. That was it. That was it. It wasn't anything more complicated than that. It wasn't, Samuel wanted to show he's an expert in this. No, guys, it's not that. I had been studying creative property investing from 2005. And the one thing I realized is there are so many ways to make money in property. And what I realized is some people do not know that. And because they don't know that, they go into it thinking, I'm going to do buy to let. Then they find out, hold on a minute, there's so many other niche strategies, and then their minds are blown, and then it just causes them to walk away from property. Rather than starting their journey understanding there are multiple ways to make money in property. And the moment you understand there's multiple ways to make money in property, you don't get confused, or you don't allow yourself to be confused trying to make money from property using all of the ways. Instead, what you do is you niche down, you double down, you focus on one or two particular strategies. So let me use that as a foundation, hopefully for you guys, for you to start understanding how I'm going to share with Noemi the key to this. Now, when I created this resource, one of the things I spoke about in this resource at the introduction, Noemi, and I think you've gone through that resource, so you'll know what I'm talking about. I speak about the 3 types of revenue you can make in property. Okay, there are only 3 types of revenue you can make in property. Now, because I used to work in education and I used to do a lot of work with maths, okay, I understand that if you work with an infinite group of things, it's a lot harder than to work with a finite, a fixed group of things. So rather than me saying to people when I coach them, oh, you know, have you looked at the 30 different strategies and thought which strategy you should focus on or which you should niche? I don't do that, because any human being trying to juggle 30 things or more than 30 things, let's just use this term, an infinite amount of things, they're going to be juggling for life without even ever getting to a solution. So what I do is I take the finite box and work with the finite box in order for us to solve the infinite set of problems. So what is the finite box? Well, the finite box is the 3 different types of ways you can make money in property. And there's only 3 different revenues you can make in property. What are those 3 revenues? The first one is cash flow. And guys, this is not in any specific order, but it's just to give you the insight. The first one is cash flow. That is residual income coming to you on a month-to-month, week-to-week, day-to-day basis, depending on how you set things up. The second is profit. Profit is I buy a house for 100, I add 20k to refurbish it. I've now spent 120 roughly, including the mortgage, whatever. I now sell it for 150. I've created a pre-tax profit of 30,000. That's profit. I've liquidated a certain amount of money. I can't make any more money from that property. It is what it is. So that's profit. The third way is equity. Okay, I bought a house a couple of years ago for £100,000 less than it was valued by a surveyor. So what does that mean? I've got £100,000 worth of equity as the day of the purchase, you know, just in the bricks. Now, the issue with equity, I can't go to Marks and Spencer's. I can't buy more suits. I can't buy more waistcoats with equity. Equity is money stuck in the bricks. But they're the 3 types of money you can make in property: cash flow, profit, and equity. Why is that important? The reason it's important is because the moment you choose to focus on one of these out of the 3, you've already kicked 100, 200, 300, 400, maybe 20, 30 strategies out of the window. Does that make sense, Noemi? Yeah? So let me say this to you. If you're focused on equity, Noemi, okay, doing short leases might make sense. Okay, doing short leases, if you're focused on profits, might make sense. But doing short lease opportunities when you're focused on cash flow doesn't really make much sense. The reason it doesn't really make much sense is because again, some of you may not know about short leases. If you have no idea what short leases are, just let us know in the comments or just reach out to us at another time. But guys, this is the thing. A short lease strategy doesn't naturally lend itself to being a high cash flowing strategy, whereas HMOs done the right way do lend themselves to being a high cash flowing strategy, which is why so many people preach HMOs side by side with preaching get out of your job, leave your job, become financially free, blah blah blah, because it's a cash flow strategy. So the key for you, Noemi, is to ask yourself first and foremost, what am I desiring to focus on? If I'm picking a niche, which world does my niche live in? Does my niche live in the cash flow world? Does my niche live in the profit world? Or does my niche live in the equity world? Then straight after you've made that decision, you then ask yourself, if you want, you can brainstorm, take out a piece of paper, you know, and start to brain dump, you know, take a pen, take some highlighters, you know, take some board markers, like get creative with it and start asking yourself, what are all of the cash flow strategies I know if you're focusing on cash flow? Okay. Now, again, for you, Noemi, you've got access to that 30 ways in 30 days resource. You might go through that resource again in light of you having chosen which of those 3 you're going to focus on and say, okay, I'm going to take all of the cash flow strategies Samuel talks about to start with, and then I'm going to ask myself, are there any more I can think of? You know, and just start with that brain dump. From that brain dump, then start doubling down. Okay, of these cash flow strategies, which of them actually fit my temperament? Which of them are going to take lots of time? Again, another thing, I've shared this on the live stream before, but I'll share it with you again, Noemi, because you might not have watched that live stream, and this will help you. Start asking yourself about your current situation, your current resources. Do you have £200,000 in the bank? Now, that's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it, but it's for the viewers, it's for me, it's for all of us to ask that question. If you've got £200,000 in the bank, then certain cash flow strategies, i.e., buying HMOs, setting them up 3 beds into 6 beds, and renting them out, that might work for you as a viable cash flow strategy. But if you don't have £200,000 in the bank, if you've got £20,000 in the bank, if you've got £2,000 in the bank, there are going to be certain strategies that are cash flow strategies that are going to jump out to you and say to you, you can do me with £2,000. Whereas there's certain strategies that are going to say, you need 500,000 to really get yourself going with me. You know, if you're buying pubs, getting planning permission, selling those pubs, that's going to take you money. Because a pub is a commercial entity and usually it's a lot bigger than a typical house. So therefore, you're going to be paying a lot more than a typical house acquisition. So to be a pub acquirer, you're going to need a lot more finance to back you initially than to be a rent-to-renter, for example. So they're the two things I'd say I'd leave you with, Naomi, as your foundation in terms of what we're talking about. The first thing is look at what you're focusing on, which revenue stream you're focusing on, cash flow, equity, profits. Then start to talk to yourself about what resources do you have available. Do you have a team? Okay, you don't have a team. Do you have time, or are you working full time? Do you have cash just sitting around, or do you not have cash? Do you have access to cash, etc., etc.? So as you ask yourself these questions, what you're doing, and again, most people don't see it like this, but what you're actually doing as you do the process I've just described, you're forcing yourself towards a strategy rather than saying what most people think, oh, I can choose anyone. Because guys, we can choose anyone. But the moment we choose anyone because, oh, it looks good, or oh, it makes money or whatever, we go into a networking event, we go into an online presentation, we might jump on this live stream. And I hope, guys, you don't do this because this is not the purpose of the live stream. But you might jump on the live stream and be like, oh, Samuel mentioned this strategy. I've never heard of that before. I'm going to start doing that strategy. Guys, we are opposed to shiny penny syndrome. That's what it's called, shiny penny syndrome. When you hear the newest strategy and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that strategy. The reason we're opposed to it is because it just creates confusion. It doesn't help people get success. Success comes from focus. So the best way to force yourself to focus is to look at your actual real scenario. How much money do you have for marketing? Is it only £200-300 a month? Okay, what kind of marketing can you deploy with that amount of money? How much money do you have to do your first deal? Is it only £5,000? Well, that kind of tells you already what kind of deals you need to be doing. You know, what are you looking for? Revenue stream. Are you looking for the profit? Are you looking for the equity? Are you looking for cash flow? Okay, I'm looking for cash flow. That kind of starts to allude to things. So as you build a picture of your current predicament, it effectively will tell you there's only 2 or 3 strategies you should be focusing on right now. And then you say, okay, that's my niche. I'm going to focus on it real hard. So yeah, I think that should give you a whole plethora of information, a myriad of things for you to start thinking about, and hopefully to help you moving forward as well with that, Naomi. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be contemplating that. The only thing that comes to mind with it is, you know, if I need to lay out a wider matrix to even understand and make sense of this. At this stage, what comes to mind is there is, you know, what I would prefer or what is most suited to me, and just like we talked about the situation of a vendor, divorce, financial issues, gambling, etc., there's also the market conditions. Given what is happening, which one of these 3 do you think would be more appropriate, and for London especially?
Okay, good question. Good question. Great question. Like, okay, of the 3 that I shared, I would say to you, obviously, divorce right now, even if the current climate results in more people getting divorced, which it potentially could, that's not going to be an effect, a ripple effect we're going to see today. That's a ripple effect we'll see in months.
Sorry, I don't mean the situation of the vendor, but
okay.
Like cash flow, profit, or equity. Those
yes.
3.
Okay. So you're basically asking which of those do I think is going to become more prominent in this current predicament, or more available, more easily available in this predicament? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. My answer to that is all 3. All 3. All 3. There isn't any particular one. All 3. Basically, what you have to bear in mind is the strategy fits into the revenue stream. So I can give you one example which will really hopefully help. Right now, with the current climate, I believe we're going to see a large influx of commercial owners selling up. Okay, and one of the articles I'll read.
Exactly what I was going to ask you about.
Excellent. All right.
All the businesses going bust, including the pubs.
Excellent. So if we've got a large influx of commercial owners selling up, the question is, where's the opportunity? Okay. So we've spoke about pubs, so let's just keep speaking about pubs just to make it easy for the people that are listening. Now, if I say, okay, I'm going to focus my niche on pub acquisition. Okay. All right. You want to start going to buy pubs. What are you going to do when you buy pubs? Okay. Are you going to buy pubs and negotiate down, specifically looking at people with financial issues, so you can negotiate massive margins from the market value and your acquisition cost? Now, if you're going to do that, what are we actually doing? We're being equity. We're being equity focused. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yes.
All right. But now, let's say my exit is buy and hold. If my exit is buy and hold, then I'm 100% equity focused, because yes, I lock in the equity when I negotiate that massive price reduction, but I keep the equity because I'm not selling the opportunity. So it's that's fully an equity approach. However, I could do the same approach and say to myself, well, I'm selling this asset the minute I secure it. The minute I buy it, I'm basically going to do a light refurb or no refurb. I'm just going to wait 6 months, depending on your mortgage situation, whether you got in with bridging cash, etc. But I'm just going to sell the asset straight away. Now, if you're going to sell it straight away, this is no longer an equity approach. Because you've changed your exit, you've actually changed the revenue you're focusing on. So, Noemi, you tell me, what are we focusing on now if I'm going to liquidate straight away? Profits, 100%. Okay, so the reason I'm saying that in this current climate, all three are viable is because it's really not about the market condition that dictates which of these revenue makes sense. It's really about the strategy you're employing. And it's also about, side by side with that, the exit, which for me is embedded within the strategy, is part of the strategy. So if you said, look, I'm looking for pubs which I can buy for this ratio price compared to the market value, and then I'm going to refurbish them and rent out all of the rooms, because a lot of pubs come with residential rooms above. I'm going to rent out all of the rooms as a HMO, and I'll close the pub, or I'll keep the pub open, or I'll turn the pub into more rooms with planning permission, whatever. The key to that was then you'd be looking at cash flow. So really, it's not about which of those three. It's really your predicament should inform you which of those three you're focused on, not the market conditions. The market conditions plays more of a part in what approach you use to acquire, rather than what revenue stream you're focused on. Hopefully that helps. Yeah. All right. Absolutely brilliant. All right. I'm going to give you one more. If you have one more question you want to ask before I jump into the news article I wanted to share with you guys, but is there anything else, Noemi?
I guess where to start. How do you build that full? There's a lot of things that come to mind in terms of action plan for anyone that is at this stage. How do you make sense of all of this? Going through what's my condition, what's each of my metrics, my situation, what is the niche, what is the strategy? I might not even know the strategies that will fit. And you look at one area because, for example, next door I could do short leases, but that's an Article 4 area. I know a lot about HMOs. Should I do a second area where I can do HMOs, but the two are just different areas? Is that even how do you make sense of that? How do you make your choice?
All right, so you make your choice by starting. That's what I'd say. What a lot of people do, and I'm not saying this is you, I hope it's not you, but what a lot of people do is they have all the information, but they take none of the action. Okay, so when I say none of the action, I don't mean about marketing, deploying the marketing or anything like that. What I mean is we've just spoken about 2 or 3 things to do as kind of like a foundation to strategize and start to choose what niche you're going to focus on. So for me, the key to all of that is making a start, getting out the A3 sheet of paper, getting out the highlighters, the pens, the board markers, whatever, and asking yourself, what am I focused on? Which revenue stream? Is it profit? Is it equity? Is it cash flow? Choosing one of them. All right. Now, for some people, they're going to be forced into certain ones. Okay. For some people, if you were £2 million wealthier because you own £2 million of equity, that would not change your life. for many people watching this right now, if you had £2 million in equity, it would not change your life. Now, let me say this to you, because you might be listening to this and thinking, Samuel, you do not know what you're talking about. If I had £2 million worth of equity, it would radically change my life. Listen, equity is money in bricks. I can say this a million times and know I'm not wrong. For some of us, if we had £100 million in equity, it would make no difference to our life. Okay? And that's just the truth. Why? Because equity is not what you think it is. Now, for some people listening to this, they're going to be like, yeah, it will change my life because I'd sell it. Okay, you'd sell it and therefore it would no longer be equity. So for most people, equity is not what they're looking for. So they can scrape that one off the mind map straight away. For some people, it's if I had 50k in my bank, my life will be completely different. Let me share this with you. I did a podcast episode which we released yesterday called The True Value of Money. On that podcast episode, I was breaking down a whole bunch of stuff. One of the things I was breaking down is that for most people, having more money in your bank account doesn't even change your life, because it's not about the money. It's about what you can use the money for. So when you start to understand that, you start to equally understand that for most people, the real focus is cash flow. For most people, I'm going to be honest, for most people, even as a coach, I found this. Most of the people I coach, even with £4 million portfolios, I've got coaching clients who have excessive wealth in equity in their portfolios. And I've got coaching clients who are, normal people with no properties that they own, just maybe £5,000-10,000 in the bank. The point is, over all the years of my experience coaching people in strategy and property, I find again and again and again that most people really need cash flow sorted. If they get their cash flow sorted, their life radically changes. Whereas profit a lot of the time doesn't radically change their life. Why? Because you go buy a new watch, you buy a new car, you might buy a new house, and the money's gone. So you got to go and work again. But cash flow is a little bit different. Again, I'm not pushing anyone saying you got to go get cash flow. No, you got to make your own decision. But the point I'm making is, when we think about it, how do you start? You start by starting. You start by actually saying to yourself, which of these three is for me? And you have to put a stake in the ground and make that decision, not because someone said it and it's a good idea, but because you decided, actually, based on my scenario, my lifestyle, my predicament, where I'm at, this is the one I'm focusing on. Then after you get to this is the one I'm focusing on, you then go into the transition of what we said second. Now, for some of you who have never heard of this, never seen this before, go and get this resource, okay? The Sourcing Blueprint, absolutely free ebook, okay? www.impactproperties.com/sourcing blueprint. Okay, now why am I telling you to go get that blueprint? Because just like Naomi said, for some people you don't know where to start. That blueprint is a very simple and easy place to start. It will break down to you the 4 key areas of property sourcing simply, no jargon, simply. And the great thing about that is, when you understand all I need to do is follow the 4M formula, you can start asking yourself similar questions that me and Naomi are talking about right now. Like, okay, how do I successfully market to my target audience? How do I effectively manage these relationships? Because managing relationships isn't just about, oh, I've got a phone and these people have got my number. When you're shopping in Marks and Spencer's and people are trying to call you to tell you they've got a property deal to sell, how do you manage that? That's part of managing, okay? And going forward to the other M's as well. So, Naomi, my answer to you is you just start. You just start looking at it. You just start getting it on paper. You just start asking yourself the hard questions. And when you ask those hard questions, you start to get the answers. As you get the answers, don't keep them to yourself. Biggest mistake most people make, the more they learn about themselves, they keep it to themselves. You should never do that. Okay, the more you learn about yourselves, the more you should share it with others. Why? Because now you become polarizing. You start to separate the people you don't need or don't want around you, and start to invite, through means of sharing that, the people you need and the people you want around you towards you. Okay, and that just it doesn't come from you being arrogant and saying, oh, I don't want to talk to anyone who doesn't have 100 grand. No. But the more you realize, oh, I just bagged another 100 grand on my last deal, and you share that, the more people who have bagged 100 grand on their last deal come out of the woodwork and like, oh, good job, Samuel. Glad that you were able to do that. I did something like that 2 months ago on a deal. This is what I did. And you'll be saying to yourself, wow, like, these people are reaching out to me. Like, why are they reaching out to me? They're reaching out to you because the saying goes, the old English saying, birds of a feather flock together. By default, the more success you get, or the more realization and revelation you get about who you really are in your endeavors, the more you share that, the more you attract people who are at the same level or a level above or a level below. And then you've got to vet that. You've got to manage that. So that's what I mean when I say just start. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful for you as well, Noemi.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. It's been a real pleasure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump off the call. Thank you for calling in, Noemi. We really appreciate you. I've got another caller on. Most welcome, Noemi, anytime. I'm going to come to the other caller. The other caller we have is 1762. 1762, I'm coming to you. Give me one moment. What I just want to do is quickly share with you guys something that we recently saw so that you guys can have a clear understanding of what kind of things are taking place in the market right now. Okay. And to be honest with you, some of the things that are taking place right now, I think are crazy. Okay. But I just want you guys to know this, because what happens is people don't share this information with you. And sometimes because you don't hear this information, you don't understand how powerful this stuff is. So I'm going to jump straight in. This was a newspaper article that was shared with me by one of my coaching clients. The headline is Tougher Rules for Landlords. It goes on to say Barclays is to stop giving mortgages to buy-to-let landlords who buy property through their own limited company, which, if you're in any kind of investing circle, is probably the majority of people. From June the 26th, it will also no longer offer mortgages to private landlords looking to buy properties with more than one unit, and to limited liability partnerships, which is a LLP. It says companies set up by at least two people, as well as limited companies that can be registered to only one person. It goes on to say, the bank said that it sold very few of these mortgages, okay? Now, this is Barclays, okay? This is Barclays. I don't know if every bank can make that claim, but Barclays are making the claim that they sold very few of these mortgages to people, okay? So, again, if we don't have the statistics, we can't tell Barclays is lying or not lying. But we know that this is a fact. They're pulling products for and from specific people. Bear that in mind. It goes on to say, Aaron Strutt at Trinity Financial Group, a mortgage broker, said lenders are wondering how they can leave themselves less exposed to the economic fallout from the pandemic. Buying a property through a limited company has become increasingly popular with investors because you can now claim relief on your mortgage interest, a favorable tax treatment that is being phased out for individual landlords. And it goes on and so on and so on. Guys, I could go on and read all of this, but what I want you to understand is this is what's happening right now. Products are being changed. People are facing things that they weren't facing before. This is going to have an impact. Let's jump on the call and then we'll come back to this in a little while. Okay, good evening. Caller 1762. Who am I speaking with?
Hi Samuel, it's Yogesh here.
Hi Yogesh, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Excellent, I'm doing really well. Great to have you on. How can we help you?
I'm just eating some food, so hold on 1 second. I wasn't quite sure when you were get to me. Basically,
we've got our first caller who's eating while they call in, guys. Yogesh, go for it. Let me have your question.
I listened to the whole of last call. I wasn't quite sure how long to leave it, and then I decided to have some food.
It's all good. It's all good.
Virtual assistant. So I'm going to get my first virtual assistant. I'd like to know if it'd be good to know if you've done it or anyone you know has done it, and how they actually found them. But my main question is about how to make sure they work for you and are effective for you and do what you need them to do. And if there's any software programs, like somebody said there's something called Asana, which is some.
Your call was cutting up. It's getting choppy, Yogesh. I've heard the majority of your question, but it's just getting choppy. I just want to let you know.
Yeah. So I want to know if there's any IT or any systems I can use to make sure they do what I need them to do efficiently. Yep. How to make sure how to quality check them, how to make sure they're I guess, doing the work fairly. Just any tips, any pitfalls with working with virtual assistants, and that's working with those in the UK and abroad.
Excellent. All
So
right.
I might get both types.
Excellent. All right. So, guys, again, I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you're getting any value from the live stream tonight, if you're getting any value from this video content, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe, become a part of our community. And side by side with that, hit the bell notification so you can stay up to date with all of the videos we drop, live streams and non-live. Now, Yogesh has just called in and asked a fantastic question. He's basically said he's about to get his first ever virtual assistant. For those of you who are online, if you can hear Yogesh, let me know you can hear him and let me know the volume's fine so I don't have to keep repeating the questions from the callers. But Yogesh has asked a really powerful question. He's basically said, look, give me some tips. Like, let me know how I can make sure my virtual assistant is actually doing the work, is working for me, is making things happen the way they're supposed to make things happen. And side by side with that, also let me know if there's different ways that we can source these particular virtual assistants as well. Okay, so Yogesh, is that a good summary of your question?
Yeah, there's a software program called Asana.
Yep.
So like any IT software like Asana that would help me get the most out of them, because obviously there's going to be some investment of training them, but any ways of minimising the time I have to spend training them would be great.
Excellent. All right, so basically I'm just going to jump straight into this question to give you guys maximum value. First thing is this. Remy says enjoy dinner, Yogesh. All right, so first thing is this. When you're working with virtual assistants, okay, I have virtual assistants in my business. Do virtual assistants work? Of course. I guess that's the answer I'm going to use. All right, not a yes. That's a resounding yes. Virtual assistants can be extremely effective. Okay, I have virtual assistants doing multiple different things in my business, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to tap into that kind of a resource as well for as long as we have been. Now, I'm going to start from the ground up and just try and make it simple because of time as well. First thing is, where do you source virtual assistants? When I first started sourcing virtual assistants, I was using websites such as Elance. For those of you taking notes, Elance, that's E for Echo and then Lance, Lance. Now, Elance doesn't exist properly anymore because it was bought out by another company, and that company is now called Upwork, Upwork. All right, now there are several different websites across the internet you can use to find freelancers. Okay, there's freelancer.com, there is online.ph, I think it's called, or onlinefreelancer.ph. There are so many different websites depending on where you're looking for your virtual assistant. So first and foremost, I would encourage people, if they can, to get virtual assistants. The only thing I would say about it is the training is something you should not sniff at. A lot of people go out there and get virtual assistants. They don't train them properly. They don't even think about training. They don't consider training as a component. And what you need to understand is you have to consider training as a component, because effectively it's the most important part of the process. If you do not know how to train your virtual assistants, you're going to learn on the job. And if you learn on the job, I can tell you that can be a very expensive, a very costly, and a very time consuming endeavor. Okay, so if you are going to go out there and you are going to source virtual assistants, do some YouTube searching. How do you train a virtual assistant? How do you teach a virtual assistant to do the task you're trying to get them to do? Another thing I'll add on top of that is there are innovative solutions in the UK that you can tap into where people can hook you up with virtual assistants that they have already trained. And these are virtual assistants who are not in the UK, but because they're already pre-trained, you get the added value of utilizing them in your property business without ever having to train them. Now, if this is something you guys are interested in, just send us an email, info@impactproperties.co.uk, info@impactproperties.co.uk. Let me see if I can just type that inside of the chat. And basically, if you send us an email just saying, look, Samuel, I'm interested in, connecting with someone who can get me virtual assistants in the UK which are already trained, then I can make that connection with you and the organization that are doing that, or one of the organizations that are doing that currently. Now, going to Yogesh's crux of his question, okay, how do you basically monitor them? All right, now it depends on where you find them from. And what do I mean by that? If you use a portal such as Elance, as it used to be, or Upwork as it is now, they have embedded within them work recorders. okay, work recorders. And these work recorders, the way they work is the freelancer or the virtual assistant has to record themselves, if you choose that setting, whilst they're doing the work for you. So because they have to record themselves while they're doing the work for you, when you get billed however much for however long, it also says these are the recordings of the person's screen for the time that they were working. And obviously, if you want to do that, it makes sense to do that. You go through those videos and you make sure that they were working on your task throughout the period of time, and then you sign off and give them their money. Okay, so that depends on the platform you're using. Now, Asana is not, I'm gonna be transparent. Asana is not something I've used before. Yes, I've heard of it because Asana's got a great marketing team and they've been marketing all over YouTube for about the last 3 years. But Asana is not something I've used personally myself. It's not something I use with my virtual assistants or my team. So I can't mention any comments on that. In terms of any other software that you can use, obviously there's all these softwares out there now, Monday.com. You've also got software such as just the Google Suite. You can utilize Google Suite for the virtual assistants. One thing I would encourage you to probably do is go and tap into, there's a software, it's an online software, but there's a software called Loom. I believe it's called L for Lima, OOM. Loom is a great software for creating videos, basically tutorial videos to teach your freelancers or to teach your virtual assistants what tasks they need to do. So loom.com, I believe it is going to be the software or the online software I would encourage you to go and utilize, so you can make tutorial videos to basically teach your virtual assistants how to do the specific task that you're setting out for them. But guys, look, virtual assistants is a whole world of stuff. It's something that on our 12-month program we coach people on. It has its own module, and the reason why we have to make it its own module is because there's so much that we could say about it. It's not the kind of thing you just call in and get all of the answers for. It takes time, and there is going to be an element of trial and error, and hopefully if you know what you're doing, it won't be trial and terror. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Yogesh, and gives you kind of the insights that you were looking for.
Yeah, brilliant. Can I add one little question on that?
Go for it.
So trusting them.
Yes.
I mean, you've got some VAs, you say. Do you trust them with financial information, bank accounts, paying invoices, reconciliation? Because I feel very nervous about doing that. But I just wondered. But it would save me a lot of time if they handled all that.
All right.
What do you think about that? Yeah.
Cool. So Yogesh asked again another powerful question. He says, how do you trust virtual assistants with banking details, financial information? And the reality is this: if you feel how you just alluded to feeling, Yogesh, don't do it. That's what I'd say to you. Don't do it. Like, what you have to remember is these virtual assistants, there is a stigma about them. Okay, and maybe being a black male who's 6'2", I'm all too comfortable with understanding how stereotypes and stigmas work. And just to put it very simply, because there is a stigma around people who are virtual assistants working in another country, doing stuff for you, the stereotype is that they're not as qualified, or they're not as capable, or they may be dubious. I have never found that to be the case in my experience. And the reason I share it with you like that is because what I want you to understand is, in many cases, utilizing a virtual assistant gives you the opportunity to employ someone who is well and way more qualified than someone you would be able to employ with the same revenue, or with any revenue that you have currently in the current country you're in. So to give you an example, I've had virtual assistants who have MBAs. I've had virtual assistants who have PhDs working on stuff for me. And if I was trying to hire someone in the UK with a PhD, guys, I don't think anyone with a PhD would be taking a salary of less than 37k per annum. But again, I've got virtual assistants who may have that level of qualification, who are happy to take less than 37,000 per annum in order to do some administrative tasks for us or certain other tasks for us. So the answer, the short answer to what I'm saying to you, Yogesh, is if you do not feel comfortable giving them the access and that information, don't give them the access and that information. maybe I might do a video soon with some of the software that we use or that we're looking to use to start using with some of our virtual assistants, and that will hopefully help you as well. So keep your eye out for that video. It's not one we've created, so again, it might take a while, but keep your eye out for that, because there are some software that we are starting to roll out with our virtual assistants where we don't give them passwords to accounts, but we give them access to the accounts. So their level of access is like a hierarchy access thing. The level of access they will have will allow them to access certain, software or certain bank accounts or whatever, but not be able to modify or edit or whatever. So there's all bunches of software out there. Again, some of them don't come to mind because they're not stuff that I necessarily use every day. But we'll probably look at putting a video out with that if that's what you guys want. So let me know in the comments if you guys want a video where we talk a bit more about the stuff we're currently using and plan to use with our virtual assistants, and we'll be happy to do that as well. So hopefully that helps you, Yogesh, yeah?
Yeah. I look forward to that video, and I've sent in the email.
Excellent.
To connect me. So
Excellent.
appreciate it all.
Excellent. Most welcome.
Do that video as soon as you can, please. I appreciate it. I really look forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you, Yogesh. We appreciate your support. It's been great having you on as well today, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, cool. So that was Yogesh. Thank you for your call, Yogesh. We got another caller. I'm going to take this as the last call. It looks like a number I've seen before, but let's see. 6394. Good evening.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, is that Remy?
Yes, it's Remy.
Hi, Remy.
Yes, it's Remy.
You've dialed the number into my subconscious. Every time I see it now, I think I've recognized that, but it's all good. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good, thanks. First time on the show, I think. So yeah, hopefully you're getting used to my number.
All good. All right. So, what is your question, and how can we help you?
So my question is about a viewing I went on this week, and it was slightly more, very different type of viewing that I've been on.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm looking out for rent-to-rent, and this particular property was completely, in such a really bad state.
Yeah.
It needed so much work, to the extent where I felt like it needed more work than was worth a rent-to-rent.
Yep.
So I, went away and, thought about it for a little while and, realised it probably wasn't going to be worth the hassle or effort. But somehow the next day, the agent was, really inquiring with us and, so, even if you put a low offer, the landlord might come back to you or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we was in the middle of go through figures. How much is all this going to cost? And and yeah, in a short space of time, the property was gone. And initially, I thought, okay, it's fine. It doesn't really fit my criteria because it needs so much work. But then it made me think, what actually happened to that property? So I wanted to kind of inquire with the agent. I haven't really got a response as yet, but just really wanted to come on this call and just ask you, what would you do with this type of property?
Okay, cool. So Remy's question, guys, I believe you can all hear Remy, but Remy's question effectively is, what would I do with a property that looked like it needed excessive rescue and looked like it needed excessive renovation in order for it to work as a rent-to-rent? Is that a good summary of the question?
Yeah.
All right. So what I'd say to you is this, Remy, again, this kind of connects with one of the answers I was giving to Noemi earlier, but I'll share it with you for you to get it from a bit of a different vantage point. Okay. Effectively, one of the things you need to get comfortable with as an investor is knowing your thresholds. Like, what's your return on investment threshold when you buy a property? If you buy a property, is it 15% return on investment? Is it 100% return on investment? If you're not making 100% return on investment, do you still buy? Do you still think? Now, what we got to realize is the more thresholds and criterias we have in our business, the easier it is for us and the faster we become at making decisions. So for example, I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a seller yesterday. This particular lady, she owns 2 properties in London. One of those properties is a maisonette, first floor maisonette, and the other property is a house. And both of them are in Southeast London. And basically, she's basically said to me, look, I want to get rid of the buy-to-let, then I want to get rid of the residential. After I've sold both of them, I then want to move to the seaside and basically live there and retire. Okay, what are you hoping to achieve is effectively what I asked her. She said, well, you know what, from the sale of the first one, I want to liquidate and get enough money to pay off both of my mortgages. Okay, what are you trying to achieve from the sale of the residential? Well, ideally, I'd like to liquidate and walk away with £200,000 in equity. So this is what she's told me. Now, if I work out backwards from what she's trying to achieve from the end result, i.e. she wants to walk away with £200,000, okay? And I look at how much her existing mortgages are. She gave me all of that information on both properties, how much she pays monthly, etc. I've got all of the information I need. But I can work backwards and start to say, well, hold on a minute. If I use a lease option on these properties, this is the kind of revenue I'll end up with each month. Obviously, a lease option doesn't fit her residential because unfortunately she won't get the £200,000 unless I'm going to give her £200,000 and then control her property, keeping the existing mortgage. So the point I'm making is when I find out what she needs to exit, I can start working backwards. Similar to yourself, this is one of the reasons why I don't massively promote working with agents. And it's funny because we recently said we're going to produce a video called Working with Agents, you know, etc. I'll leave the title for now. But basically, the reason we're going to do that video is because we want people to understand that there are pros and cons with working with agents. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just you have to weigh it up and decide whether the pros are good enough for you or whether the cons are bad enough for you in that sense. Now, the reason I say this is one of the things I find with a lot of my coaching clients is what they don't understand is the moment you work with an agent, you have a bottleneck in your communication, or a better way to put it is you're working with a scenario similar to Chinese whispers, i.e. I say something to the agent then has to say it to the vendor. I say something to the vendor, it never gets to the vendor directly, it always has to go through a third party, a gatekeeper, etc. Now, the reason this is an issue is look at what you've just said. Well, I've asked the question, what's happened with the property? And I haven't got an answer back yet. Whereas if you ask directly to the seller or to the current landlord, you might have got an answer a lot faster. Now, my presumption is, and I'm just saying this as a presumption, my presumption is the person who has taken that property has probably taken that property maybe as their first ever rent to rent, or they're much more experienced than you and thought, you know what, I got 12 rent to rents under my belt. I'm happy to put 15 grand into this because I can see that if I make offer X, i.e. £1,000 a month, rather than the 1,600 it was actually on for, I'm going to be doing the landlord a favor by refurbishing their house, which the landlord probably doesn't have the money to do themselves, which is why the landlord probably isn't doing it themselves. But then B, I'm also going to have this landlord effectively, without sounding bad, but in my pocket, because I've just spent 15, 16, 20,000 pounds on that property. Now, let's break down the numbers. If you are going to generate £3,000 on a rent to rent, from that £3,000, you're paying the landlord £1,000. Side by side with that, you're only paying £500 for bills. You're all in for 1,500, but you're generating 1,500 in profits. Over a 12-month period, you can start to work out what kind of revenue that is. Okay, so let me do that for you right now because I think this is of relevance. Okay, if we've got 1,500 per month times 12 months, that's a profit of 18,000 a year. Now, at 18,000 revenue being generated a year, if your original investment was 15 grand, you're still generating more than 100% return on investment. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, yeah. You wouldn't know that if you haven't done where we started in terms of this call, identified your threshold. If you haven't identified that, look, my key threshold for each of my rent to rents is 75% return on investment, or 100% return on investment, or if you're like some people I know, 300% return on investment. Okay, you want to put 5 grand in to get a rent to rent, and you want to generate 15 grand in a year. Okay, now if you're that kind of a person, you can make 300% return on investment each year, because that's your threshold and that's what you're looking for. Any deal you see which is not 300% return on investment, do you take it? No. And your decision process becomes very quick. And what do you do with deals that are great deals, i.e. you're going to generate 18 grand in year one, but you got to put in 15 grand in year one, which is probably 120%, 115% return on investment? You sell them on to other people. other people who are more interested in those kind of returns on investments. So when you ask me the question, what would I do if something like that? My answer is very simple. If it fits my threshold for rent to rent, I will take that deal, regardless of how much I have to put in. Why? Apologies, guys. I'm going to say it, the reality, because I'm probably not even putting my own money in the deal in the first place anyway. And I know I'm helping an investor generate more revenue on their funds. So if I need to put 20K in that, I'm basically going to reach out to an investor, tell them, look, put 20K in this. I'll give you 5% interest throughout the 12 months that I've got your 20K. And I will make sure that that property is going to generate 130, 140% ROI. And at the end of 12 months, I'll repay the 20 grand as well as the 5% interest or whatever interest we've negotiated. And I might have that deal for 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. The landlord's happy. I've saved him from being able to renovate his property. The agent's happy. I've given him his fee. I'm happy. I've negotiated a very low monthly rental, and I'm even more happy because I'm getting cash flow for 4 years when I only use someone's money for 1 year to make that happen.
So, yeah, I guess it depends on... I just wonder, do you actually have a threshold for how much you're prepared to spend on a rent-to-rent?
No.
Regardless of...
No. No. Okay, and it's good you've asked that, because maybe I wasn't clear enough, and I'm very grateful that you just asked that, because you've made me realize that some people might be thinking I'm talking about money to be made. Okay, and guys, I very rarely focus on money. Okay, when I'm talking about a threshold, I'm talking about a return on investment threshold. So for me, I don't have in my head, and I'm gonna call this exactly what I see it. I don't have in my head a psychological ceiling or block from how much I can spend on a rent to rent. And the reason I don't is because I don't base what I'm going to do based on amount of money. It's not like, oh, I have to get that. Some people say this whole, you need to make £100 a room. Excuse me. You need to make £100 per room to make for a rent to be profitable. I don't live by that rule. It's a good rule of thumb to use, but I don't live by that rule. I've got a specific return on investment threshold. So for example, and basically the reason I use return on investment is because the definition for me of return on investment is how hard is your money working. If my return, I'll give you an example. If my return on investment threshold for a rent to rent is 300%, okay, I know there are very few things in the world where my money is going to work that hard. Very few things. So if there's very few things where I can put in £1 and get out £3, I'm telling you, if it costs 100 grand to get 300 grand, I'm putting in 100 grand. I don't have the psychological block. Oh, it's rent to rent. Oh, you don't own it. Because you don't own it, you know, there's no point in putting that much money in. I don't have that psychological block. My question is this going to return my threshold of ROI? If the answer is yes, then my next question is, how are we raising the money to do this deal? Because I'm doing the deal. Because it fits my threshold. And that's it. Okay, it's not about how much money it is. And let me say this to you, Remy, because you're one of the people who's done our online training. Like, Remy, what I want you to understand is the only way you become way more successful than people around you is if you shed yourself of the thought patterns and processes that the majority of people have. The majority of people have that whole, oh, if I can get £600 per house, then I'm going to keep doing it. Like, the problem with that is, what are you spending to get that £600 per house? If you're spending 6 grand, then in a 12-month period, you're only making £1,200 profit. So someone might say, oh, that's 120% return on investment. Okay, if 120% ROI is your threshold, then that makes sense. But if your threshold's 150%, it don't matter if you're getting £600. It don't matter if you're getting 2 grand a month. If it doesn't fit your ROI threshold, you shouldn't be doing it. That's how I see it. Okay? So hopefully that helps you. Yeah?
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. All right, Remy, so what's the most valuable thing you took from the call? And then we're going to jump back on to the news article before we wrap up for tonight.
I'd say focus on ROI and stick to your threshold.
Excellent. All right. Hope you have got value as always, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much.
Anytime. Take care.
Good evening.
Thank you. All right, guys. So that was Remy. Fantastic to have her calling in, and all the other callers. Guys, thank you for calling in today. You've made the show an absolutely fantastic show. Just coming back to this article, guys, that I spoke about earlier, I want you to bear this in mind, okay? Because for some people, you might not actually realize this, okay? Lending is changing under our noses, okay? And I just want you to think about that, okay? Financial lending is going to be changing from right under our noses. And if you don't keep your finger on the pulse of what's taking place, and again, you guys, you know me, if you haven't seen, go watch the old live streams and you will see. Go watch the other videos and you will see. I'm not a big proponent of just read the newspaper and believe what it says, or listen to the news and believe what it says, okay? The point I do want to make to you is that there is information, okay? Forget the hearsay and the spin that gets put on it by the media, but there's information that is being broadcasted and shared with us, which is quite important, and we need to be mindful of that information, because it's that information that sets us up in order to get the best scenario going for us as we move forward in our property journey. And the reason I'm saying this to you guys is because based on this article, if Barclays are making the decision based on the fact that they don't have many clients apparently who actually use buy-to-let mortgages in company structures, then are other lenders going to follow? And that's a question that you might actually want to ask yourself. Are other lenders going to follow? Are other lenders going to be doing the same thing? Are other lenders going to soon be telling us, hey, we don't give mortgages to people who are in that predicament as well? All right. So guys, I want you to be really, really mindful of that as you move forward in your property journey. Now, like I've said earlier, said it a number of times, gonna say it again, go and get the free resource, the Sourcing Blueprint. It's absolutely free. We created this to help you guys move forward and help you understand how you can start to source properties with absolutely less effort, okay, with no extreme effort. Why? Because you understand the framework, you understand the 4M formula that I created and coined in order to help people move forward in their property journey. And guys, we want to help you move forward, and that's the reason why we give you the Sourcing Blueprint. So go to the link www.impactproperties.co.uk/sourcing blueprint and get your free blueprint on us. Now, side by side with that, for those of you who really want to know how to take advantage in the current climate, we've got a webinar coming up on Monday. We have an on-demand webinar. You can go and get that webinar or be a part of that webinar on Monday by going to the link www.impactproperties.co.uk/webinar, and you will learn about how to take advantage in this current climate and win, which is the key to also win. So without further ado, guys, I am going to be out of here. I'm going to encourage you to go and watch this video, what comes first, deals or investors, so you can move forward in your property journey knowing the right things to focus on. And then straight after that, why don't you go and watch one of our old Q&A live stream, Strategies in the Storm, so you can move forward in your journey. If you haven't hit subscribe, become a part of the community. This is Samuel I Can Win. I'm signing out. I hope you have a great day and happy investing.